I mean, why do you think the UK's become a nation of renters? Because we have, haven't we? Why do you think that is?
I've just followed the rest of Europe, really. I mean, that's what happens. Most people in Europe don't own their own properties; they rent. So, and it just gives people, it's not as important to the younger generation. And obviously, borrowing money is a lot harder these days than it probably than it ever has been.
I mean, there's a lot of stats out there. Our guys have written a number of blogs, for example, looking at the average age of first-time buyers, the sort of house prices before elections and things like that. And sometimes it's not as you perceive. For example, everybody would say that the average age of a first-time buyer is a lot higher than it was 20 years ago, and it's actually not. It's the same or very, very similar. So it's not I'm renting because I can't get a deposit together. It's although that sometimes is an issue, but it's more of a mindset. It's more of a choice now that people have chosen to rent.
Not a poor man's choice anymore, is it?
No, not at all. It is the flexibility. It is the as Susan said, the gadgets. I want to put my pre-order in for my iPhone 8 before I put 500 quid aside to save for my house deposit, and that's just the nature. It's just the world we live
today, in. And in 12 months' time won't be. So an £800 apartment, per calendar month apartment today that's brand new and everything's lovely, in a year's time it'll be a year old, but that tenant will probably want to move to something else that's perhaps a little bit more expensive but is brand new again. So we're in a much more in much more of a changed sort of market in terms of what people's expectations are. They want the latest of everything.
Let's talk about the future of renting. In Derby at the moment, the percentage of private renting is in the early 20s, and if memory serves me well, Burton is in the mid to late teens. Do you think that's going to grow over the next 10 or 20 years?
I think the best way to look at what's going to happen in the future is look what's happened in the past. I mean, if you look at the stats for the last 10 years, you'll see a steady increase in the private rental sector for the reasons we've just discussed. I can't see that changing. I can't see anything coming in to halt that. Supply of houses is still short. The government's pledged to build, I don't know what it is this week, but it's not going to be enough in terms of the demand. So I can only see that figure rising.
I think you wrote an article recently about the number of houses that are being built in Derby. Looking at the whole of the UK, they reckon we need 200,000 houses even to stand still, and we're building about 140, 150. If you roll the clock back to the early 70s, 30% of houses were privately rented. So we're not going anywhere new, we're just going back to where we used to be. And if the number of houses that are being built aren't big enough and there is no social stigma of renting, then renting's got to grow, hasn't it? Because people still need a roof over their head. And I don't think Derby City Council, or is it East Staffordshire? Is it East Staffordshire? In Burton, are going to be building any more council houses, are they? So who else is going to house them? The private landlords.
The only way a trend like that can stop is if something comes into the marketplace to stop it or replace it. And there isn't. There's nothing that's going to come in to stop that private rental sector percentage rising. People aren't going to suddenly have the ability or mindset or requirements to buy.